AITA for not telling my wife the real reason why I married her. I am not the OOP. OOP is you, firm ad 374. AITA for not telling my wife the real reason why I married her. Originally posted to our AITAH. Original post October 4th, 2023. To give some context to my current situation, I need to provide some background information. About 14 years ago, I am 42 today, got my Meng degree but was struggling to find work. I did eventually land a job working for a medium-sized company, but even then I was still struggling financially as I owed so much debt in student loans and lived in a pretty expensive city. It was admittedly a pretty low point in my life. I'm sure many people can relate to the feeling that you've done so much schoolwork and then don't have much to show for it. I did, however, build a good relationship with my boss. I'm 84 today, as in my mind this was the easiest way to earn promotions and in turn a high income. Eventually, I met my boss's family. One thing that quickly became obvious was that his daughter, Rose, F39 today, liked me a lot. I didn't think too much of it at the time because I thought mixing my professional and personal lives would be a bad idea. Also, I did not reciprocate her feelings in any way, though for obvious reasons. I was always exceptionally polite to her at every interaction. Long story short, my boss's wife, F78 today, found out, and I started getting invited by my boss to his house pretty regularly for things like dinners, etc. Throughout all of these, my boss and his wife would somehow always steer conversations in ways that led to me talking to Rose or would leave the room for some reason or another, just leaving the two of us together. Later, my boss would even tell me things like how I felt like family and he'd be happy to recommend me to higher positions, etc. Since his wife and daughter are so fond of me, needless to say, I started talking more to Rose, and within weeks I got a promotion. While I will admit to not feeling much of a romantic connection with Rose, I did put a lot of effort into fostering that relationship, and she was happy with the attention I was giving her. After a few months of this, we were married. As you can imagine, my career really took off then. However, I did leave the company roughly 2 years after getting married, and with the recommendations I was able to get from my former boss, father-in-law, and several other people he introduced me to, I was able to secure a good position elsewhere. Today, I can happily say that after being married for 12 years and having 3 children together, there is no other woman I'd rather spend my life with. Because I feel like this, I've always felt that my primary motivator for getting married to Rose is no longer relevant. That being said, I had lunch with 2 of my longtime friends, Michael, M43, and Wilson, M38, a few days ago. We haven't seen each other in about a year, so it was a nice opportunity to catch up. I'd like to add that Michael and Wilson are both familiar with my situation as we were in regular contact back then. At one point in the conversation, Michael asked if Rose ever found out the real reason why I decided to marry her. I told him, of course not, and that her finding out would be needlessly painful for her. Wilson agreed with Michael, saying things like honesty and transparency were the main things he and his wife picked up from couples therapy, and that it would be better long-term if Rose found out. I reaffirmed to them that Rose not knowing would be best for our family, and the conversation largely ended there. That being said, I have started to think more about what they've said and do feel a little guilty. AITA? Update October 7th, 2023. I just saw my previous post this morning and was surprised, and a little overwhelmed, by the amount of responses I received. Nonetheless, I do think it is appropriate to provide a quick update. I had time to do some self-reflection over the past few days, And my conclusion is that I am probably the luckiest man in the world to have such a fantastic wife and wonderful children. Rest assured that I have no intention of my wife ever finding out the real reason why I decided to marry her. Also, I am very confident that my two friends won't say anything to my wife. I failed to mention it earlier, but I also have some ammunition on Michael's marriage. And given that Wilson is in couples therapy, I'm highly doubtful he'd say anything. Even without this, I can't imagine either of them overstepping such a boundary. I'm sure many of you are wondering how they knew in the first place. The reason they knew was because we were all housemates at the time and they were able to witness the situation unfold firsthand. I guess you could say that while I'm largely an introverted person, I still talk a lot, especially with my friends. I do still feel guilty about my initial motivation to pursue my wife, but also very grateful for how things turned out. I like to think she's also grateful. Over the last few days, I have been trying to turn this gratitude into action to make my wife feel appreciated. Yesterday, I brought her breakfast in bed, and in the evening after work, I brought her a surprisingly expensive bouquet of flowers. Tonight, we have reservations for her favorite restaurant and a sitter who will watch the children. I know these things are minor in the grand scheme of things, but I want to do more thoughtful things for my wife. This will be my early New Year's resolution. Relevant comment from Oop. My love for her certainly did grow over time. When I first met her, I thought she was physically stunning, and still do. I was just very caught up in my own life, largely finances. Also, I thought that mixing my professional and personal lives would not be good. Also, our personalities were opposites. She was certainly attracted to me, and when her father covertly encouraged me with some incentives, I went with it. Regardless, I love her and the family we've created together more than anything. This is a repost sub IAM, not the Oop. When you post something online, it significantly decreases the chance of she'll never find out. Though, I'd say he could cut out half the issue by telling his wife how glad he is that her father set them up, and that dad has a great eye for seeing things that people couldn't spot on their own. When she asks why, tell her that he didn't realize how wonderful she was when he first met her, and dad inviting him over a few times gave him the chance to see that she was amazing and that he's so happy that he chose her. This way, when the idiot friends say, he only married you for a promotion, he can tone it down to, I only went to family dinner for a promotion, but meeting you and falling in love was real. I am very confident that my two friends won't say anything to my wife. I failed to mention it earlier, but I also have some ammunition on Michael's marriage. And given that Wilson is in couples therapy, I'm highly doubtful he'd say anything. Quote, this gives me a lot of pause. Michael won't say anything because Oop also has something on him and his marriage, which sounds kind of awful. Why do both of them have relationship-ending secrets they're keeping from their wives? Wilson not saying anything because he's in couples therapy is also off, but in a different way. Dude already said that couples therapy has taught him a lot about the importance of honesty and open communication in relationships. If anything, he's probably more likely to tell. This is totally going to blow up in his face at some point. Man, this is just a bummer. Like, yeah, telling her now would be cruel, but I don't know which is worse. Knowing or not knowing your husband married you for a promotion. It would be humiliating and crushing for her if it ever came out. And it probably will. So Oop would put this on Reddit with a load of details so that anyone who knew just 10% of his story could find out and tell his wife? So weird. I don't know if I believe it. So Oop has blackmail evidence on Michael that will destroy his marriage, so Michael is likely a Cheating. Wilson, the one who voiced the opinion about honesty being the best policy, he thinks will keep his mouth shut because he's in couples therapy. Poor naive Oop doesn't realize one thing: couples therapy is quite likely going to make Wilson be more open with his wife about Oop. The wife is going to find Oop a disgusting human and tell Rose the truth. I bought her a surprisingly expensive bouquet of flowers. You got several well-paying jobs out of pretending to love her. Do you want a medal? I brought her a surprisingly expensive bouquet of flowers. What a charmer. No wonder she fell for him. Oop does not sound like a good person at all. Back in community college, I took a speech class and we had to do dueling persuasive speeches. Not a debate per se, but we split into pairs and had to give speeches about opposing sides of an issue of our choice. The most fascinating one, the only one I actually remember the gist of some 15 years on, was arranged marriage versus love marriage. Pair of immigrant women, one African in her 20s and one Middle Eastern in her 40s. Did the speeches, and the older one spoke in favor of arranged marriage because she was quite happily in one. And I bring this up because OOP's situation reminds me of what she described. She essentially argued that the initial blush of a crush can't really be trusted to build into a lasting connection, and that a properly arranged marriage can introduce two people who wouldn't necessarily pick each other out of a crowd but have the same goals and values, whether a marriage is arranged or not. As I recall her argument, a truly lasting connection has to develop over time. The arranged structure removes the confounding factors of lust and superficial attraction from the foundation of the connection. As a suburban American white dude, I found her perspective fascinating, if not something I would want. So, from that perspective, Oop basically set himself up an arranged marriage. Many millions of people around the world find genuine love and happiness in such relationships, even if they don't fit the Western romantic ideal. Seems like a healthier, kinder way of looking at the situation. Very surprised at how understanding this thread is. I read it and thought, he's a sociopath. I hope I don't get judged too harshly for this one, but honestly I don't think this is too big of a deal. Ignorance is bliss, and I think that both Oop and his wife are happier the way things are. I also find the dad creepy, promising a promotion if Oop dates his daughter. And while arranged marriages happen, both parties generally know it's arranged, unless Rose is aware of the bribery. I've got to say, my favorite part of this is the utter cluelessness the guy has about so many things. 1. His friends absolutely will spill the beans. The "I've got dirt on him" friend is going to have his secret exposed eventually and will go scorched earth. And the other is in marriage counseling, so that's going to prevent him from telling? My dude. That's going to make him more likely to tell if the counselor is any good, and makes him realize that keeping secrets in a marriage isn't good. Point 2. He thinks the nepotism doesn't matter because he moved to a different company. Does he think the other company would have still hired him for whatever position he has now if he didn't have the previous higher position at his FIL's company? That they were likely interested in him because of his rapid advancement? 3. The love bombing is going to somehow fix things and not make his wife suspicious that he's feeling guilty for something and start poking around. Sure, she'll likely suspect him of cheating, but eventually it's going to come out. What does he think is going to happen when she figures it out on her own versus being told? 4. No, it's not that I didn't like you. I thought you were hot but boring. But I got used to you after using your daddy to advance my career and as an incubator for my kids. So now I guess I love you or something. So it's totally cool. Yeah. That'll fix it. The update in 2 months in TIFU asking for how to salvage his career after his Phil sabotages it. For breaking his daughter's heart is going to be popcorn worthy. I'm getting downvoted for this, but I don't get how Op can live his life like this. I would need to be a psychopath for me to need the threat of mutual destruction amongst friends. And to marry someone for something like a promotion. I would feel like I was walking on eggshells all my life. The surprisingly expensive flowers was enough to tell me Oop never does anything to make his wife feel valued. How long will this phase last, one wonders. And women get constantly judged for allegedly sleeping their way to the top. The wife knew he was her father's employee. That he was in debt. They got married within a few months of knowing each other. I think it's good that he eventually fell in love with her, because this definitely could be a totally different story. I don't believe for a second the wife doesn't have some inkling about this. Her dad, who was Oop's boss, helped push them together, gave him a promotion very soon after, and then they got married within the year. If she doesn't have some kind of idea, then she's probably extremely naive. I don't see how she could possibly not know, considering her parents were the ones who helped her orchestrate this whole thing. I'm sure she had a hand in the matter too. Maybe he doesn't know that she's the reason why they are truly married. Lol. Oop and Rose are so fortunate that this marriage worked out so well. I am glad they love and appreciate each other. Some marriages of convenience work out great despite their unromantic origins.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.